Welcome everyone to Northeastern FlexJobs webinar. My name is Michelle Rapp from the Office of Alumni Relations, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Strategy. So I work on these webinars and other career programming and resources for alumni, so I'm always interested in what issues you're facing, what topics and types of programs you'd be interested in, so feel free to get in touch with that information. We're delighted to have all of you here today, and it sounds like we have a wonderful geographic variety, so we're all being flex and remote. And today, she and I have known each other in previous career services work, and I was thrilled to discover that she's a Northeastern alum, and also that through LinkedIn I discovered she was at FlexJobs, and she's been willing to join us for this webinar. Just to share a little bit about her background, she is a Senior Career Specialist at FlexJobs, the award-winning site for telecommuting, flexible schedule, and freelance job listings. She offers career, hiring, and work-life balance advice through the FlexJobs blog and media outlets such as Fast Company, Forbes, and NBC News. Brie has over 10 years of experience in career advising and job search assistance. Her goal is to provide practical information and resources to help people overcome their roadblocks and discover career happiness. And Brie is a proud alumna of Northeastern's Master of Science in Human Services program. And just a quick housekeeping matter, so you can use the chat box, which is accessible from the purple arrow on the lower right corner of the page. So that will be your way to participate and ask questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brie.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much for having me. And hi, everybody. As Michelle said, I am a Northeastern alum, so I'm super excited to be doing this event for you guys. And I also saw that we have people from around the US and the world here, so that's pretty awesome. And I myself am in the Boston area right now, but about 3 weeks ago, I would have been doing this from Dallas, Texas, where I had lived for about 5 years. So I am especially excited to be back in the area and actually get to, pass through campus every once in a while. So yeah, very excited to be here. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be discussing today. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview about FlexJobs, the company that I work for now, and myself and my background. And then we'll get right into the flexible job market. So trends in telecommuting and flexible jobs. We'll talk about what the flexible job market is, like what sorts of jobs actually apply under that big umbrella of flexible work. We'll also talk about the top flexible career fields, like who's actually hiring, what career fields are offering this type of work, and then searching for flexible jobs, lots of tips on that, how to avoid job scams, which are an unfortunate side effect of flexible work, or I shouldn't say side effect, they're an unfortunate component to finding flexible work. And then positioning yourself for flexible jobs. How can you actually put yourself out there as a professional and find this sort of work and show employers that you're qualified? And then, as Michelle said, you can use the chat function to put in any questions that you might have or any comments, any other tidbits that you would like to share. I find some of the best advice from these webinars doesn't actually come from me. It comes from audience participants. So if I'm talking about a certain topic and you have a tip that worked for you when you were looking for a job previously, or you know something that you wanted to add to it, please feel free to type that into the chat as well. But you can ask questions as we go, and then I'm going to try to answer as many of them as we can at the end. So I'll probably talk for about 35 or 40 minutes on the flexible job market, and then we'll try to spend the last part of this answering all of your questions. So a little bit about myself. So it was supposed to be animated where this silly picture of me at graduation in 2004 would have popped up and then gone away really quickly, but the animation doesn't work here, so you get to stare at it for the duration of this slide. So what this slide says is that the company that I work for, FlexJobs, was founded in 2007, so we've been around for 10 years. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. We list telecommuting, flexible schedule, part-time, and freelance jobs, and we pre-screen every job in site before it or every job in company before it gets put on our site. So that's one of the benefits of FlexJobs. And we also have a lot of free resources that are just open to the public, no membership needed. I've been working on the blog at FlexJobs for about the past 6.5 years now. And so there's thousands of articles related to job searching for flexible jobs, resumes, cover letters, interviewing, all of that sort of stuff, if you have any inkling to get some information in those areas. And then I've also have a background in career advising. I worked at a manual college just across the road kind of from Northeastern for about 5 years in their career advising department. I loved that. It was one of my favorite jobs of all time. I got my master's there in human resources, and then at Northeastern when I got my bachelor's in human services and counseling. So I just love the Boston area. I'm very happy to be back and be around town. So as Michelle said, I really like working with professionals and job seekers and helping them find work that fits their lives and overcome whatever issues they might be having in getting to that type of work. So very excited to be here with you all. So let's first kind of define what is a flexible job. What are we talking about when I say flexible job? I'm going to be using that term a lot throughout this, so I wanted to make sure that everybody is understanding of what that actually means. So we look at 4 different areas when we're talking about flexibility. That includes scheduling, so something that has flexible hours or an alternative schedule that's not a very rigid 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 sort of schedule. The next area of flexibility is location. So for these, we specifically mean telecommuting or remote positions. There are a number of different ways to define telecommuting and remote work. You can hear it as at-home jobs, work-from-home jobs, virtual, distributed teams, all sorts of different ways. But they all generally mean the same thing. Work that can be done from a home office, not necessarily 100% of the time. That's a big misconception about remote work, is that if you are working remotely or you find a remote job, it's going to be 100% from home or outside of the office. And the truth is that most telecommuting or remote jobs are some sort of hybrid where you're working either in the office or in person with clients and you're working another part of the time from home. So be on the lookout for that sort of thing when you're job searching. You're not going to find only 100% remote jobs. You'll probably find mostly somewhat remote jobs. And then status has to do with whether you're freelance or an employee. I consider freelance jobs to be a fairly flexible job in and of themselves because you are very much in charge of the clients that you're working with, your hours, your schedule, your, where you're doing your work, that sort of thing. Employee-based jobs can be flexible, but they usually have to offer some other type of flexibility, like flexible scheduling or working remotely, something like that, to be considered flexible. And then we look at flexibility in terms of the number of hours that you're working. So we do think both full-time and part-time jobs can be flexible. The catch there is that full-time has to have some other type of flexibility. So just like an employee-based job, if it's a full-time job, it needs to allow you to either work remotely some of the time or all of the time, or have a flexible schedule or some combination of those. And then part-time jobs, professional level part-time jobs, we consider inherently flexible. So those, because they offer fewer hours and you can sort of fit them into your lives a little bit easier. And so my case is actually a pretty good example of this. I started out at FlexJobs as a part-time remote writer. I was a freelance writer at the time. I worked up into a full-time employee-based remote job with a flexible schedule. So there were a number of combinations of flexibility there. And now I have transitioned, after I had a little kiddo, transitioned back to part-time, fully remote work. So my job's been 100% remote the whole time. And there are definitely 100% remote jobs out there. It's just one of those things to keep in mind that they're not all that way. And actually, Andy is saying he did find one of those a few years ago. So that's great. And then also Andy's got some tips for finding jobs I see on there. So everybody take a look at the chat to find out some good sites for finding remote jobs. But the bottom line is when we're talking about a flexible job, it's basically anything outside that traditional 9 to 5 in office type of role. So just to show you what the growth looks like in terms of flexible working, and you all have probably experienced this in some capacity or other in your careers, or maybe have. These are US statistics, but growth is happening in remote and flexible work globally as well. So even though these are just US based, we definitely see the same sorts of growth worldwide. So you can see that, back in 2007, we had single digits for the percentage of people in the US who were telecommuting or freelancing, and about 25% had flexible schedules. And now 10 years later, that has really grown in every category. 38% of people do at least some of their work from home. 34% of US workers are freelancers. and 64% say they have a flexible schedule. And of course, there can be some crossover there. So people who are freelancing are often doing their work from home. So they might be part of that 38%, and they're part of the 34% who freelance. So it's growing by all indications, and we're definitely seeing that at FlexJobs too. The number of job listings we get each year grows year over year, and has since I started there back in 2010. So it's a good time to get into the flexible job market if you're looking for something that is less rigid than a traditional sort of in-office job. So some of the top career fields for flexible jobs, these career fields are taken from the data that we have at FlexJobs. We post, let's see, I'll say right now we have about 33,000, I think, jobs posted to the site. So we look at each month the number of jobs that have posted and where are they posting, which career fields are these jobs being posted for. And these are for all types of flexibility. So everything from remote to freelance to part-time to flexible schedule is included in here. So these are the top career fields that we see month over month. They tend to stay in this top 15 range somewhere. It does shift on occasion. So accounting and finance often goes up into, you know, the top 3 or 4 when it's accounting and finance season, or accounting tax season, I should say. And then it, you know, goes back down into somewhere in the top 10 to 15 when it's not tax season any longer. So this is just a good general indicator that these types of career fields are really hiring the most for flexible jobs. We take this data from over 50 career fields, though, 50 career fields. So that means that there are a lot more career fields than just these 15 that are hiring. It's just that a lot of flexible jobs are posted in these types of career fields. But again, you can sort of see the variation and variety of jobs that are posted. It's not all customer service or all data entry. There actually is a huge variety of flexible work out there. And I wanted to also highlight some of the remote job titles that we see most often, because when we do surveys of FlexJobs users, the vast majority of people are looking for a remote job or a telecommuting job. And so that might be the same for everybody who's here today as well, that the remote seems to be the most popular type of flexibility. So I wanted to highlight some of the remote jobs that we see on a regular basis. So at FlexJobs, we have a team of job researchers, and their job is to basically go out and find these positions. So companies that are hiring for them, either having the company come to our site and post them, or going out and using the jobs on the company's site and kind of compiling them all in one place. And these are the ones that they say, the researchers say, they see over and over again. And so you can see, again, it sort of mirrors that career field list that we were just looking at for all types of flexibility, but with remote in particular in mind. So you can see things from sales and customer service to healthcare and education and marketing, and of course, computer and IT and software development. But there is that wide variety once again. And actually, just to kind of answer this one question from Christine number 2 about sharing the PowerPoint, I would be happy to. I don't know, Michelle, if there is a way for you to get the slides to people, but I'm happy to send them out there if it's possible. So the top skills that flexible employers want, and Michelle says that would be great. So yes, the slides will be forthcoming for anybody who's attending today. So no need to scribble furiously to take notes. So the top skills that employers are looking for when they're hiring for this type of work. So we talk to a lot of employers at FlexJobs and also at our sister site, remote.co. It's remote.co. And that's a job search site that's focused exclusively on remote work. It also offers a lot of interviews and insight into remote companies. So if you're looking really for remote in particular, remote.co is a great resource for that as well. So these are some of the top skills that flexible employers are looking for. Communication skills seem to be always number one whenever we ask employers, what are you looking for outside of somebody who's qualified for this particular marketing job or development job or whatever it might be? What sorts of skills do you need them to have? These are kind of those impersonal or interpersonal, I should say, or intangible skills that we talk about. So communication, number one, being able to talk well and communicate well in verbally and also in writing. And of course, this is always the bullet that I stumble on when I'm trying to talk about it. So basically just being able to communicate with people who are not physically in the same room as you. Because even if you're working flexible hours in an office, that means that you might not be working at the same time as your colleagues in that office. Or if you're working part-time, there are going to be times when you are needing to email or talk on the phone because you're just not physically present at the same time. So whether you're working remotely or doing some other type of flexibility, communication skills are really huge. Also self-management, the ability to focus. This again is for all those types of flexible jobs, but especially in a remote environment, there isn't that pressure of having other people around you and kind of making you feel that you need to do your work and stay focused and be on task. So you really have to be able to do that yourself. Time management and task management also have a lot to do with that. And then proactive questions. This is one that, especially with remote companies, we hear a lot about. People who aren't afraid to speak up and get clarity when they're unsure about something or they need more information or they just have a question for whatever reason. People who are just not afraid to ask questions, who don't assume that they know something or that they'll find something out later or that they don't need to know something. So being able to ask questions, and this comes from the girl who at Northeastern would sit in the back of the classroom, not raise my hand, not want to speak up in class. For some people, this is a skill you really have to work on developing. And so that's, over time, it definitely comes in handy when you're working remotely or flexibly. And then comfort with technology and troubleshooting, especially when you're working remotely, but also flexibly. You might not be working at the same time as the IT help desk. You might work at a company that's very small and doesn't have an IT help desk, and you are the one who needs to figure out your own IT or computer problems. So being able to do at least basic troubleshooting. A lot of, especially remote work environments, are what we call BYOD, which is bring your own device, which means that you are responsible for your equipment. So in FlexJobs, that's the way we work. All the employees at FlexJobs use their own laptops, their own printers, all of that sort of stuff. So if something goes wrong on my device, it's more or less up to me to try to fix it. So not being afraid of that sort of thing and knowing where to go for help online or your local Geek Squad or whoever it might be. Those are all good things to have. And then being familiar with remote communication tools, which we'll talk about on the next slide, what those actually are. And yes, Amazon is hiring right now. I think they're hiring like 5,000 remote employees, something like that, over the next few months. Yeah, it's a big one. Thank you, Andy, for that. Andy is a wealth of information, I have to say. So the top Flexwork communication tools that we've surveyed remote companies and remote company leaders to find out what are their teams using to communicate. And then we're also talking to employers who don't offer remote jobs but offer other flexible work options, and they're using the same things. So you've probably experienced this in your own offices or wherever you might have worked. Even if you are in the same office as someone, you're probably emailing them. You might pick up the phone instead of walking to their office. You might be sending them a Slack instant message or Yahoo or Google or whatever you use to talk to them instead of actually going to where they are and speaking. So these are not just for remote workers. These are for all flexible workers. So things like IM, that's very big. The top ones that we see are Slack, Google Chat, and HipChat being used. For video conferencing, that's another big one. GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, Skype, Join Me, and Google Hangouts. File sharing, of course, and this is even for inflexible jobs, you have to be able to share files with people now. Google Drive and Dropbox are the two biggest ones we see these companies using. And then with virtual office environments, we see things like Yammer and Sakoko. A virtual office environment is a little bit more specific to remote companies. This is something that a remote company uses to give the feel of working together in an office. So Sakoko, for example, is what we use at FlexJobs. It's kind of like a blueprint of an office. So it's like if you took the roof off of a building and you saw all of the offices and the cubicles and where everything is divided in the hallways, that's what we see. And we can see who's quote unquote in the office at any given time when we are. So we can pop into someone's office. It just kind of gives that physical feel that you are with other people working. And so that's very specific to remote teams, but it's really good to know that it's out there. The reason that I mention all of these specifically is that if you already have experience using these communication tools, you should put them on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. You should let employers know that you are comfortable communicating this way. If you haven't used these, or there are some on this list that you're not familiar with, they usually offer free versions or at least free trials. So I would definitely recommend, if this is the way you want to work, and your next job you want it to be flexible, going out, downloading some of the free versions of these, and just getting used to them, just doing the brief overview, watching the videos of how they work, all of that sort of stuff to become familiar with them so that you can then say, yes, I know Slack, I've used Slack, or yes, I'm familiar with Google Hangouts, or whatever it might be. So that's why I wanted to list all these in particular, is because it's kind of one of those homework assignments you can do after this webinar. You can go out, look at the free versions of these and use them a little bit and get comfortable with them, because it adds something to your resume and it adds something to you as being somebody who is ready for flexible work. All right, so when you're actually searching for flexible jobs, the keywords that you want to search for are many, and they're all slightly different. And you do want to search on whichever of these keywords appeals to you as far as what type of flexibility you're looking for. The keywords to avoid. This is a very short list. It's an easy list to remember. When you're searching, try not to use work from home or work at home. Most people describe remote jobs or telecommuting jobs as that. I'm working from home, I'm working at home. It's very easy, it's very descriptive. It's also the keywords that scammers most often use. And there are a lot of scam jobs when it comes to work from home jobs. So scammers know that this is an easy way to describe it, and they're targeting people because of that. So they will use work from home and work at home to lure you into scam jobs. This will help you eliminate a lot of the scams from your search and help you find legitimate jobs if you just eliminate those two. I think it was back in 2010, the FBI and the Better Business Bureau actually designated work from home and work at home as keywords to be aware of and stay away from because they were so associated with scams. So stay away from those two. The keywords that you should be using in your flexible job search, there's lists here. The first column you'll see is for anything that's telecommuting related. So there are a number of different ways to talk about remote and telecommuting jobs, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. These are some of the main ways that we see companies advertising their jobs. This is the language that they're using. So add those to your job search arsenal as you go out there and look for work. And then the second column there is for freelance jobs. So these are often called freelance jobs, contract jobs, project-based, consultant jobs are often freelance, and then contract to hire. Contract to hire means you start out as a freelancer with the potential to become a regular employee over time. And then the third column is for flexible scheduling or just general terms. So there's flexible schedule, flexible hours. Work flexibility is just kind of one of those key phrases that a lot of companies use in general to describe that, yes, they offer these. Flex work options, part-time, half-time. I would like to talk just a minute about part-time versus half-time. Part-time is a vague term that can mean any number of hours. So it could be 5 hours a week, could be 17 hours a week, it could be 20 to 30 hours a week. Every company means something different when they say part-time. So that's really important to pay attention to. If you see something that says half-time, that generally means about 20 hours a week, because a full-time schedule is considered about 40 hours a week, so half of that, 20 hours. And so that's just important to know the distinction. Those two, part-time does not always mean 20 hours a week. It could be, like right now, I work part-time. I work about 32 hours a week. And so that's, just one example. I've seen part-time jobs out there for 5 or 10 hours a week. So those are some of the keywords that you should definitely be searching on, depending on what type of flexibility you're looking for. And then where to actually search for flexible jobs. So Andy brought up a couple of different good job sites out there. Of course, I will say FlexJobs, but I won't go on about that. I think it's a good resource. And then we also really recommend, wherever you're searching, try to make it one of those niche job boards or smaller sites. Especially when you are searching for this type of work, you're looking for needles in haystacks. And so the really large job boards are really big haystacks, and you don't need the vast majority of jobs on that site. So unless you are targeting your search really specifically, it's going to be difficult to pinpoint telecommuting flexible types of jobs on those sites. They're out there, they're certainly listed, but there's just such a mass of jobs on those big sites that it can be hard to pinpoint stuff. So niche job boards like Andy, actually the two that Andy mentioned, are those smaller sorts of jobs or job sites. And so those are better. They're really tailored to this type of work. And they also tend to keep cleaner databases. So you're not going to find quite as many jobs that don't apply to you, quite as many jobs that are now defunct or have been filled, all of that sort of stuff that you have to sift through. You could also go directly to companies' career pages. So what I was talking about just before about looking for keywords like work flexibility and work-life balance and flexible work options, the reason that I suggest that is because, unfortunately, most employers don't actually specify that something is a virtual job or a telecommuting job in their job description. Every employer we talk to who doesn't do that, we try to urge them, please, please, please say somewhere in your description that it is remote or whatever it might be, because it just makes it easier for job seekers to find them. But for a variety of reasons, employers either don't do that or can't do that for some policy reason. So that's important to know. So that's why you're looking for those like work flexibility, flexible work options, those vague ways of describing this type of work, because a lot of times on the career pages, you will find that they do support that type of work. They're just not advertising it openly and specifically. And then asking friends, family, neighbors, your professional network, your college career offices, all of those sorts of places are really good resources for this sort of thing because they all offer something different. So until I started working remotely, I didn't realize how many of my neighbors in Dallas also worked remotely. But then all of a sudden I would see them during the day and think, oh, okay, what does that person do? And I'd strike up a conversation and they would work for X company, working from home half-time or a couple days a week or full-time. And the network that I had just kind of grew because of that. So talking about that, asking people, oh, what do you do? Asking your neighbors who maybe you're just talking about your dog or your lawn or the weather, maybe get a little bit deeper and start asking them what do they do and how do they do it? And then of course, professional network is always a good way to figure out who's doing this sort of work. Oh, and I will also say, Andy brought up a really good point. He says, one problem with 100% remote work is you're competing with the whole world in some cases. And that is true. It does broaden the number of people who are qualified or available for that one remote job. However, I will say that about 95% of the remote jobs that we post on FlexJobs have some sort of location requirement where the employer says we need to hire people from either X state or X region of the country or X country instead of being a worldwide job. So there's about 5% of remote jobs are true work from anywhere jobs where anybody in the world would be qualified. You would be competing with the entire world in that case. Those are also, that 5% of telecommuting jobs are highly coveted because they are so flexible. You can bring them wherever you go. But the vast majority of telecommuting jobs will have some sort of location requirement. Typically, that is because the company might only be set up to support employees in certain states. So a company has to set up employment tax, or I should say abide by employment tax policies in every state, and every state has different policies and all of that sort of stuff. So some companies limit the number of states that they actually do that in just to keep things relatively simple for their HR departments and their accountants and all that stuff. Some companies need you to be located in a certain area because it is close to an airport that they fly out of a lot of, or clients that they have, or a region where they need you to go in and start a client base. So there are a number of different reasons that they would want you to be in a certain area, but that's really important to know about telecommuting jobs. Okay, so just to talk about some of the free resources on FlexJobs, I think I mentioned this really briefly at the top. We have this thing, the FlexJobs Company Guide. It's a free database. If you go to flexjobs.com/company-guide, it goes to, it's a database of over 40,000 companies that have offered flexible work in the past, or are currently offering flexible work, I should say. But it's a good resource where if you're just searching and finding jobs and they're not listing that type of flexibility, or saying that they're a flexible job, you could go to this FlexJobs company page, look for that specific company and say, oh, okay, they have offered telecommuting jobs and flexible schedules and whatever it might be in the past. And you'll be able to figure out if a company that you're looking for has offered that type of flexible work. So that's one really good way to figure it out. And then at the FlexJobs blog, there's lots of articles, as I mentioned, and you can go there for a lot of free advice. And yes, Stacy, I would love to answer the pay scale question that you asked before. So I'll get to that. I forget if it's in my slides, but if not, I will definitely answer that question. So just a couple tips for resumes for flexible jobs. So when you're putting together a resume for a flexible job, you should be doing things a little bit differently than a traditional resume. It doesn't need to be quite as stylized and formatted as the picture up here. I just thought that looked kind of nice, but your traditional job should include, or your traditional resume should include some specific things about flexible work that show that you are ready and able to do that type of work. So if you have previous flexible work experience, you'll want to try to add those keywords to the positions on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, talk about it in your cover letters, all of that sort of stuff. So you could either do that in the job title, so you could call yourself a freelance marketing coordinator or a remote marketing coordinator, or in the location. So you could say something like Boston remote office. So they know generally where you're based and that you were working remotely. And I'll show you a couple examples of people who've done this really nicely on the next slide. And then if you don't have any flexible experience, one of the things you can do is show the skills that we were talking about before. So the skills that it takes to actually work successfully flexibly. And that shows at least employers that you have the ability to work this way, even if you haven't done it in the past. I will also say what counts as previous flexible work experience is very broad. So if you've worked from home on occasion, and you've been pretty good at it, it's not, quote unquote working from home where people say they're going to work from home and then maybe do other things at home instead of work, which is, I think, a small number of cases, but it's always the stuff that gets the news. So, but if you've actually worked from home on occasion and you have worked and done well at it, that's previous remote experience. If you have a flexible schedule, even if it's not sort of an official flexible schedule where there's a policy at your work that you can point to that says that's the way you work, if you're able to control your hours, shift your start and end times, bank your time, working more hours some days to take off hours other days, all of that sort of flexible scheduling is in your control, then you've worked a flexible schedule. So think about the type of experience that you might have had that maybe wasn't official, flexible work experience, but that would count as it, and think about if you can include that on your resumes. So here are just some examples of things that we've seen come through at FlexJobs. So we have the very first one here is a recruiter, and this person was both an independent contractor and a telecommuter. So they put both of those things on that line where you would put the location, you would put the type of job, that sort of thing. They've put it right up there. And then tools, the second one, the pertinent technical skills. This is a really good way if you don't have previous work experience that's flexible, or if you do, but you just want to highlight some of the tools that you've used. Either way, this is a good way to put those tools on here and highlight that these can be used for flexible work. So you've got tools for effective telecommuting, and then the list of different types of tools, just like I had talked about in that slide a few slides ago. The third one is a nice way in the summary of qualifications at the top of your resume. This person has 6 years of experience working remotely and in flexible office environments. I really like that phrase, flexible office environments, because it's kind of all-encompassing, and it puts it out there that you have experience working flexibly in a very succinct way that kind of applies to multiple types of flexibility. And you can get more specific in your cover letter or in the job interview, but at least puts it out there that you understand what it means to work flexibly. And then under the professional experience section, this person also has the full-time work from home position. And they did include that work from home phrase there. Avoiding that really only matters when you are actually searching for keywords online. You can use work from home in describing what you do, but when you're actually searching for jobs, that's the keyword you want to stay away from, just to kind of clarify that a little bit. Okay. Oh, I like this, Andy. Andy yet again. He's talking about Upwork that actually has a thing that takes a screenshot of your screen so clients know you're working. That's something that you could do as well, even if you're just trying to convince your current employer to let you work remotely, which is something you absolutely can try to do. Putting together a little bit of a proposal about working remotely or working flexibly, specifically what you would want to be doing and all of that sort of stuff. But then taking, and maybe that's one of the things that you talk about is that I would, take a screenshot of my screen once an hour or something like that to show you the different things that I'm working on or show you what I'm working on at any given time. one of the things, if you, just as a side note, if you're considering asking your employer, your current employer, to let you work flexibly, or even asking a potential employer during the interview process, or maybe you get an offer for a traditional job and you want to see if you can negotiate some kind of flexibility, it could be that you offer that sort of thing where you will take screenshots as part of building trust with the employer, that they can trust that you're going to be working regardless of when or where, that you will actually be doing your job. So trust is really a big thing. And I didn't put it on the skills list because I don't know if trust is necessarily a skill, but it is certainly an attribute that you can put out there, that you are a trustworthy person, and here's how I will show you I can be trusted to work from home or have a flexible schedule, and that sort of thing. So that's actually one really nice, very visual way to show you can be trusted. Thank you, Andy. And yes, Mary, I'll answer that question about healthcare as well. Or health coverage, I should say. So going beyond the resume, in LinkedIn, of course, you can do all of the same things that I just talked about, and then focus on keywords in your summary section. So in that summary section, that's if employers are searching for people on LinkedIn, the summary is sort of at the top of your LinkedIn profile, and it's one of the first things or the main things that that will be searched when employers are looking for candidates on LinkedIn. So that's an important area to put different keywords about flexible work in addition to your actual, career experience and that sort of thing. And then online portfolios, you could certainly create one for yourself, a simple website. You can do that for free on about.me or WordPress, even Pinterest. I've seen some really creative uses of Pinterest boards as visual representations of people's resumes. Of course, this all depends on your field. If you work in a very traditional sorts of environment, Pinterest might not be the best option. If you work in more of a creative or less traditional office, or I shouldn't say office environment, less traditional industry, then that might be something to consider. And then Squarespace, I don't believe is free, but I have heard very good things about it from especially freelancers and people who are kind of building their own self-employed contractor type of business. And then just being a constant flexible job seeker, and these are just very good general job search tips anyway. So keeping LinkedIn regularly updated, or wherever you are online, keeping that regularly updated. Cleaning up your social media presence, making sure that that accurately reflects who you are, especially in remote positions. So much of what you learn about your remote coworkers and what you learn about your teams comes from what you post about yourself online. So you, as a remote worker, will probably wind up friending or following your coworkers on, if you're using places like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all of those different ones. So having just a clean presence that really reflects truly who you are as a professional, and doesn't represent a completely different person than you are showing off to employers, because that just creates a little bit of confusion among employers. Who is the person that I'm actually hiring? Are they the person I see on their social media profiles, or the person that they're presenting to me in this job search application? And then keeping in regular contact with your network. Again, as I said, talking to your network and asking them how they do their work and where they do their work, not just what they do, is a really good way to figure out who you know who's already working flexibly, and then where are they working that way? Which companies do they work for? How did they find those jobs? All that sort of stuff. All right, and just a little bit about how to avoid job scams, and we are almost at the end here, so I can tackle a whole bunch of questions. So some warning signs of job scams, and again, as I said, this is particularly applies to remote or telecommuting jobs. So if you are not able to find a company's name or the job description that you're looking at, the application says to go to this generic email address like a Gmail or a Yahoo, a Ymail, whatever they're called now. If there's no job description, or if it's a really vague job description that kind of focuses on how much money you're going to make and how easy the job is, but it won't actually tell you what you're going to be doing or who you'll be working for, that's another red flag. Instant Messenger or IM interviews. I have now heard of, I believe, 5 companies who use Instant Messenger, 5 legitimate companies, I should say, who use Instant Messenger to conduct their interviews. Most of them are remote companies who communicate primarily over IM with all of their coworkers. So they use IM as a way to interview people because they want to make sure it's going to be a good communication tool for that person, because that's how the entire company communicates. But there are, Amazon is actually one of them, since I think it was Andy mentioned them before as hiring for remote jobs. they conduct some of their remote job interviews over IM. But that's only 5 out of the thousands of companies I've looked at over the last few years. So for the most part, instant messenger interviews are typically a sign of a scam. The main thing with the scam versions of those interviews is they kind of contact you out of the blue, or they urge you to interview really quickly, and they offer you the job almost instantly. So they might ask you one question, like, why do you want this job? Or, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then they'll say, it sounds great. It sounds like you're perfect for the position. Here it is, but you have to accept it right now. So if you're ever presented with an instant messenger interview, there is a small likelihood that it's a legitimate company, but most of the time it's offered as a scam. And then the immediate job offers and the urgency to accept, no matter where the scam comes from. I've heard this with pretty much every person I've talked to who has encountered a job scam, is that they were offered a job almost instantly, and they were urged to accept it immediately. And basically, scammers are preying on the fact that you will have very little time to think about it, think it through, do more research, if they're pushing you to accept it right now. And they're also figuring that you probably need a job. Either you don't like the job that you're in, or you're not employed right now and you really need to get back to work. Whatever it is, scammers are preying on that feeling that people have that they need to get a job now. So these two things really go hand in hand no matter what the scam is. Another one to really pay attention to is that the website that you're on doesn't match the real company's website. So here are 2 examples. Both CNBC and GE their logos and some of their web pages were kind of copied by scammers and used by scammers to create fake websites. These are just examples that I made up out of scratch. Those are not actually the scam websites. So, but just to give you an example of the slight differences between the URLs, that again, when you're job searching, you're trying to move fast, you see a position that you really like, and you go, oh, it's with CNBC or GE. I know those companies. But if you looked closer at the URL, you would realize that doesn't quite look right. So the scam URLs are on the left and the real URLs are on the right. And you can see just those tiny variations make a huge difference. You are on completely different sites. So the thing to do with that is open up a new browser, do a search for whatever the company's name is and the keyword careers. And you'll be able to find their company's career page, the real one, and compare that URL to the URL that you were on and see if they match. And if they don't, you're probably on a scam site. But the main thing I will say is to trust your instincts. So like I said before, every scammer or every person who I've talked to who has come across a job scam talks about how they were offered a job almost immediately and they were urged to accept it very quickly. But they also say that something in their gut told them things didn't seem right. There was something off about the job or the company or the whole process, but they decided to go along with it anyway because they really wanted a job. They didn't want a job search anymore. Job searching is not that fun. Some people really like it. I'm a career advisor. I like talking about it. I don't mind job searching, but for most people, it's not your idea of like a great way to spend a Friday night. And so you want to get it over with quickly. You override that gut instinct and you decide to go for it anyway. I would say this is probably the #1 tip, is just trust your instincts. If something doesn't seem right, it doesn't mean abandon the ship and it's definitely a scam and run away. It means do more research, take a step back, take a pause. And if that company or person that you're dealing with gets a little bit aggressive or says, nope, you have to accept it now, or you can only interview right now, walk away. There will be other jobs out there. And either that company is just really aggressive or it could be a scam. So trust your gut. All right, so some of the most common job scams, this is just a big list of the most common ones to watch out for. Copycat scams, bad URLs, we talked about that. Pyramid sales schemes, they've existed for like thousands of years, but pyramid sales schemes are definitely alive and well as work from home jobs on the internet. Envelope stuffing, money wire transfers, anything having to do with Western Union. Not that Western Union itself is a scam company, they are real, but lots of scammers use them to move money around and to sort of transfer money to you or have you transfer money to them. And no legitimate company that I've seen so far asks you to do anything through Western Union. Rebate and forms processing, package processing, craft and product assembly, and unsolicited job offers. Job offers that are out of the blue, that require no interview or a very quick, 2-question interview. Those are typically scams. All right, so some action steps that you can, take with you and do after this presentation is over. Deciding what types of flexible work you want. So thinking about what types of flexibility is most important to you, what would fit best with your life, what would make a difference to you. So is it ditching your commute and being able to work from home, even if it's just a couple days a week or full-time? Is it scaling down your hours and finding a part-time job? Is it just having more flexible hours, being able to work full-time, or even 50 or 60 hours a week, but being able to move those hours around to fit your life? Is it freelancing? Is it striking out on your own, taking clients that you want to work with and setting your own hours, but also being your own boss and having all the business stuff that comes along with that, but really just thinking about what types of flexible work would be best for you? And then researching your field, your career field, to see what's being offered in terms of flexibility. What can you find out there? Are there certain companies that are known for being flexible in your career field? Basically just what's out there before you even start thinking of applying to jobs. Figure out what is even offered as far as your career goes. Identifying your best flexible friend skills and experiences and updating your resumes, your LinkedIn profile to have that experience on there. And signing up for free versions of the communication tools I mentioned, that's a big one for sure. And getting familiar with those so that you can add them to your resumes and LinkedIn profiles. And then updating your application materials, your online profiles, kind of positioning yourself as a flexible worker, as somebody who has experience working remotely or flexible scheduling, whatever it might be. And then, of course, start reaching out to your network and applying for flexible jobs. Those are kind of the two big goals towards the end. But the first few goals really help set you up so that you know what you're looking for, you know what's available, you know how companies talk about it in your industry or your career field. How do they talk about flexible work? And then you can actually start searching for and applying for jobs, because you will be, you'll have just a much better idea of what you're looking for and what you want. All right, so time for some questions. I will also say if you guys can start typing all sorts of questions in there, and we'll try to get to as many of them as I can. So FlexJobs, I've been talking about the free versions versus the membership side. FlexJobs is a membership site. So essentially, we don't take money from employers to post their jobs. Instead, we post the jobs without a fee, but that means that we can pre-screen every single job and every single employer before they have access to post jobs on our site, or before we post the jobs for them on our site, which helps us eliminate all scams. So you, on the other flip side, we have job seekers pay either a monthly or a 3-month or a yearly subscription fee, and that gives you access to all of the jobs, skills testing, basically everything on the site. And so the fee, just for frame of reference, is $14.95 for 1 month or $49.95 for a year. And the 3-month is $29.95. And that's before this discount thing. So if you want to check it out, I'd highly recommend it, of course. And there's also a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So if you, for whatever reason, sign up for FlexJobs and then decide, meh, this didn't really do it for me, you can request a refund and we will give you your money back. It's very simple. As a career advisor, I would never say pay for something for your job search if you can find it for free. But this actually is sort of a time saver, and just helps you find these specific types of flexible work a little bit faster and more easily than out there on traditional job boards. But yes, let's get to questions, because sales is my least favorite thing to do. So as far as health coverage goes for flexible jobs, it's very similar to the traditional job market. So if you are an employee and your company that you're working for flexibly, whether it's from home or a flexible schedule, if they offer their employees health insurance, you will be covered under that health insurance. If you're a freelancer, you will probably never find a company that offers health insurance to freelancers. So freelancers typically are responsible for their own health coverage, health insurance, things like that. Remote or flexible employees are generally find the exact same benefit packages as you would if you were an in-office or traditional employee. So that includes health coverage, sick time, vacation time, life insurance, the whole 9 yards. So it's very similar to a traditional sort of job. It just depends on if you're an employee or a freelancer. The other question was about the pay for remote and flexible jobs, which I get this question a lot, and I'm really happy that people ask it because there is a big misperception that if you go into the flexible job market, you're going to find lower paying jobs, that you will not make as much as you would in a traditional job in your career field. And we have compared lots of different jobs in terms of the salaries that they offer for a flexible job versus the average, I should say average, versus the average salary that they offer for a traditional job. And we have found very little variation. On average, they are almost identical. So we find some that pay a little bit more when you work remotely, some that pay a little bit less when you work remotely or flexibly. But for the most part, they are very similar. And so it really just depends on your career field. The confusing thing for job seekers, unfortunately, is that each company calculates its salary. This is specific to remote work. Each company calculates its salary differently. So if you're working remotely, you might be based in one city or one state, and the company is based in a different city or state or country. And some companies consider where the employee will be based. So if you're based in New York City, you're going to command a higher salary because the cost of living and salaries in New York City are generally higher. If you're living in like Louisville, Kentucky, or even Dallas, Texas, where I was, the salary rates are generally a little bit lower than someplace like New York City. So the employer will take into consideration that you live there, your cost of living is lower, the average salaries are lower for that location, so that's what they would base their salary on. Other companies do something different, where they will base the salary on where they are located. So FlexJobs is based in Boulder, Colorado. So if a company was based in Boulder, Colorado, they might just look at the average salaries for this type of position in Boulder or in Colorado and then assign salaries that way. So unfortunately, it's different for every single company. And companies don't exactly come out and say what they are thinking and how they calculate their salary. So the advice I give is to do the math yourself. Look at where the company is based and look at where you're based and research your career and salary levels for both of those locations. And that should give you at least some kind of range to work with when you're considering what type of salary are you going to make if you're working remotely. So it's tricky. And yes, Andy, I would say don't pull your credit card on your job search except for FlexJobs. I like that comment. So let's see, what other questions do we have here? I don't know, Michelle, did you catch any while I was chatting?
I'm scrolling through too, just to check.
Oh, I see one from Stacy about if you are a well-qualified employee, in senior IT management, but you're making a change, stepping down as some people would see it, how do you communicate your commitment and decisions to change? Stacy, this is near and dear to my heart because last year I did that exact thing. I was the director of the content team at FlexJobs, and I decided that I needed to lean back, quote unquote, kind of copying Sheryl Sandberg there, but the opposite. So I wanted to step down from that full-time position. I wanted to go part-time, and I wanted to actually produce content versus managing the team that produced content. So the way that I have always kind of advised job seekers on this, and Michelle, please feel free to comment on this too, is to be as honest as you can, but also to the point and brief and not emotional about it. And I don't mean emotional in a way that like, you get, I just mean don't being long-winded about it. You don't have to give a very detailed explanation. You can say, at this point in my career, I'm really passionate about doing this. And that's why I wanted to step back into this role or move down or however you want to describe it. But that's why I'm passionate about this. This is where I want my focus to be. And it's really what I value most at this time in my career or something like that. And so kind of being honest, but not dragging it out into the long story of why you want to go ahead and do that. Michelle, do you have anything to throw in there?
That's great. And also I'm just seeing a couple other questions, Brie. One is about managing data backups and storage, and also a question about FlexJobs and how they relate to later in life and potentially retirement careers.
Oh, yes. And no, I won't laugh. I love planning ahead, Carolyn. Thank you for that. So yeah, there are definitely some remote positions or flexible positions that are put out there as retirement careers. And so I think it is growing in a way because of that, because more people are putting off their retirement, either because they don't want to step away from their careers entirely, or because they can't, because they need to have some sort of income coming in. And my parents are both two of those people for different reasons who have stayed on. They actually both use FlexJobs, which is hilarious because they're always asking me fun questions about how to use the site. But they, you know, for different reasons, each of them have stayed on in their careers and have looked for this sort of flexible work. And so, yeah, I would say it's definitely, you know, that might be one way to search for things too, is sort of like retiree job, or a job that would be great for retirees, can give you ideas for things that are out there that are super flexible and that are not necessarily full-time, because I think that's mostly what we're seeing with retirement careers, are those types of very flexible, not full-time, perhaps freelance, but definitely more part-time types of roles. Tools. Susan was asking about tools that you need to have. So this is another thing that companies do differently. Each company has its own device or tool policy. Some companies will provide you with everything that you need. If it's a laptop, a headset, dual monitors, all that sort of stuff. Some companies will send you all of that. Other companies, like I said, operate in a BYOD environment, which is bring your own device. And that means that you get to pick what you're working off of. They might say you need a PC or you need a Mac. They might say that you need a headset or a landline phone. So they'll give you some guidance, but ultimately it's up to you what you choose, and it's also funded by you. So that is one thing to note, is that you may have to put in some money for your own technology if you're going to be working remotely, especially. But then other companies will give you some guidance and offer you a technology stipend. So they will give you some money to get started putting together your home office. So again, every company does it a little bit differently, but that's a really good question to ask in the interview process is, you know, what is the device policy at this company? You can leave it very vague. What tools do I need to work in the office, or how does setting up my home office work? And let them tell you exactly what they do.
Brie, there was a question about within the jobs that you highlighted as common remote jobs, do some really stand out, you know, more than others as growing areas?
Yes, there are a couple ones that are actually, they were pretty surprising, and now we're just seeing them become really mainstream remote and flexible jobs. Education is a really growing field. So teachers, tutors, curriculum developers, adjunct faculty at every level, basically. We've seen from kindergarten through doctoral degree program types of educational work out there. And so that might be you tutoring students in languages or math or biology. We have seen physical education as a remote job where you are basically a gym instructor. You're helping students who are learning virtually to stay healthy. You're keeping that component of the curriculum in there for them. And a lot of educational providers are either moving partially or completely online. So there are some public education programs that are virtual. There are a lot of private education programs that are virtual. And then there are just, you know, tutoring and teaching companies that help students, you know, who need extra help with certain things that offer a lot of online help. So that's a big area. And then medical and health is, almost every single month that we look at job listings, medical and health, #1 field for flexible jobs, and that's all types of flexibility. And we do see positions like remote nurses and remote physicians where you might go in to see clients 2 days a week, and then the rest of the time you are following up with people from home. You're doing all that work from your home office. So that sort of thing is even possible. So I think those two areas really show you that regardless of your industry or your career field, there is probably some type of flexible work out there for you, some more than others, depending on your industry, but it definitely do some research and see what's out there, because it's really interesting how much this is expanding.
Any last question? Well, Brie, I'm very grateful for your expertise in this area. You covered a tremendous amount of information, and I really appreciate the audience participation, sharing resources, and asking questions as well. And thank you for the discount offer. This is very informative and really broadens the options that we have available to us as potential employees. So many thanks to Brie and for offering to share your slides. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar within a couple of days. So you'll have that as well. Thanks again to everyone for coming. And just to mention one upcoming webinar on May 10th also at the same time, we have Know Your Worth, Negotiating Your Next Raise, and other related on-the-job benefits. And that's with our alumna, Ashley Perret, who's an expert in this area. So we hope to see some of you for that as well. But thanks again, thanks Brie, and thanks everyone for coming, and we hope to see you at future webinars.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for the feedback and for great questions and information. It was a pleasure to be here. Go Huskies, yay Northeastern. It's nice to interact with folks. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me at brie@flexjobs.com. It's really simple, brie@flexjobs.com. I'm happy to help as best I can. Thanks everybody.
Great, thank you.